Looks like we don't have anybody in here yet.
Here we go.
Oh, people are starting to filter in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I'm going to give it a few minutes here to let some more people join in. Alrighty, we've got about 100 people. Thank y'all for joining in today. This is our first ever sales webinar. We have a tech webinar that's bi-weekly that a lot of our customers join into. This one's a little bit more for customers can join in here, but this is more for people who are looking to buy a machine, ask some questions, that sort of thing. Hi, everybody. All right, I'm gonna give it another minute and then we can get rolling here. I see Brian's in here. Hey, Brian and Alicia. What's up, Alicia? Eric, hello from Quitman. All right, where can I join bi-weekly webinars? The webinar, so if you go to our knowledge base, which is right here, just type in webinar. Thunder Laser USA bi-weekly tech webinar. And then it's got links right here for you to join in.
And that'll be this week.
Okay, good deal. Alrighty, well, we've got a good amount of people in here now, so I guess we can go ahead and get rolling. So everybody, my name is Grant. I am the sales manager here at Thunder Laser USA. I am the head of sales and I handle the day-to-day operations. We also have Chris Locascio with us, who is a hybrid. He does some tech work and then also does some sales. He's on sales calls and answering tickets, doing trainings and what have you. So yeah, the purpose of this webinar is to give people who have questions and don't have time to schedule a call in, or send an email. It gives them another avenue to be able to talk to us. So we're happy that you're here. And the plan is for this to be once a month. We'll see how this goes. This is our first try. So if this goes well, we will keep doing it. Yeah, so I guess where we can start is talking a little bit about Thunder Laser, what we're about, what separates us from our competitors. And from there, we'll talk about the machines, which one is right for which customer, what they do. And then Chris is going to give us a little bit of backstory about himself, his laser journey. He's been in the laser business for a while, had his own laser company and started with a different brand, then came over to Thunder, and then eventually we hired him, but he'll talk about that. And he's also going to engrave a photo on the Odin, and we'll see when he starts that, and then when he finishes it, and then he'll give us a look at what it looks like when it's finished. And the end is going to be Q&As. We don't have to follow through with this structure exactly. We have this structure in place just in case we don't have enough questions, but yeah, we'll just roll through it and see how this goes. Alrighty, so let's talk about Thunder Laser USA, what we're about, and what separates us from our competitors. So we are the US sales and support for a global laser company called Thunder Laser. And on the sales side, we've got myself, Rhonda, Eric, and Aubrey. Aubrey also handles our admin and order processing. On the support side, we've got Chris, Chris Locascio, Brian, and then Chris Myers. We have two Chris's. They all split the trainings, but I think Locascio kind of does a majority of them, if I'm not mistaken. But it all depends on the availability. I'm sure if you wanted to go with a certain person, you could, but really it's just whatever day and time you pick, that's whoever is available, that's who you get. But yep, so let's talk about our machines a little bit, what separates us. So our machines are manufactured by our company in China. So a lot of our competitors, their machines will be manufactured by a different company, or maybe it's manufactured by their parent company and then they redo the machines before they sell it. Well, for us, our machines are made by our parent company. We do not have to redo them, rewire them, rework them before we sell them. They're made right the first time. And part of why that's important is the quality control that we have. It allows for us to not have to change the machine at all. It's great right off the bat. For instance, our laser tubes, they all have to produce at least 10% over the quoted wattage. So like 100 watt has to at least produce 110 watts, or else we do not sell it. We will send it back to the manufacturer and get a new tube in. And that same quality control kind of runs through with the rest of our components. We're not going to put a part in there that's not testing where we need it to be. So I would say that most of our competitors don't have those same quality controls. That's why they're having to gut a machine and redo it. And Chris, did you have anything that you wanted to touch on with beam alignment? What happens in this quality control process?
No, I would like to mention that I kind of approach it at a Thunder is a global company. I know we have distributors around the world, but we all have input and say as to manufacturing and upgrades. And if there are any issues, which they do happen from time to time, but very rare, we can go directly. We're on daily chats with China to make improvements on these machines. It's not just whatever we get, we have to deal with when it gets into port. It is a team effort by the global team. A lot of machines, either they don't pack the tube in or you have to align it when it arrives. These, you uncrate it, fill it with 2 gallons of distilled water, hook up your computer, and you're 99% of the time you're ready to roll.
Yep. Yeah, and that's actually a good point because we just went to a trade show back in April in Las Vegas, and our headquarters in China, some of the team members came over. And I know you guys had several meetings with them talking about what you wanted to change, things that could be improved here and there. So that's a really good.
Not only that, as the line of communication open with the manufacturing team, they spent several hours going over the machines after the show was over, just taking our input, which is great.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a little bit about our quality control. I mean, there's much more detail we can go in there, but just as a brief overview, we have a lot of testing going on at the factory. It's all got to meet our standards and our specs. And this little part where I've got the screen on now talks about how all of the machines have to be pre-aligned before we ship them. So you shouldn't have to realign a machine once you get it. And then next, I kind of want to transition into the different models that we sell. So our bread and butter will be the Nova series, and these are glass CO2 tubes. Let's see if I can get the screen to go over there. There we go. So yeah, these are our bread and butter. That's what we sell the most of. All of them, all the Nova series machines will be basically the same. We'll have a lot of people who have never owned a machine before be like, oh, I don't want to go to the 63. I feel like that's too difficult for me to learn. I want to go to the 24 instead. Well, that's not true because they all operate the same. They've got the same controller, same software, and the only differences really are the size and the wattage. So if you're brand new, don't think that you can't get a 63. Look for the machine that you have space for, number one. You got to have enough space for it, and then number two, that you can afford. And if that's a 51, go for the 51. If that's a 24, go for the 24. But these machines, the Nova series, like I said, they're glass CO2 tubes, so they need a water chiller to keep the tube cooled down so it doesn't overheat. And it needs to be in an environment that is relatively climate controlled. I mean, ideally, it would be anywhere between like 60 to 90 degrees roughly. But I always tell people, as long as you can keep it above 40 degrees, you should be fine. And the reason for that is that a glass tube, since it's water cooled, if that water freezes while it's inside the tube, it can crack the tube and you'd have to get a new one.
On that point, talking about the tube and the where was I going to go with that? The tube being overpowered and the testing is huge. There's a lot of companies out there that are pushing the limits of the boundaries of the tubes that you get. And us using tubes that are rated higher is huge, so we can maximize. You hear a lot about you can't run the system at 100%. With our machines, you can, because we are tuning them to our power supplies. And then also, like Grant mentioned with the chiller, we have an active chiller that is constantly cooling for constant engravings and constant cuttings. The performance is going to be the same all day long. It's not going to fade away. So if you have a passive chiller, like some of our competitors, it heats up, and that's the enemy of the performance of these tubes. And running a chiller, an active chiller like we do, is huge.
Yep. Totally agree. And then so on these glass CO2 Nova series machines, being that they're CO2, they work mainly on organic materials. So that could be like wood, leather, acrylic, fabric, you name it. I mean, there's other plastics that it can work on too. But really the limitation of a CO2 comes down to metal cutting and engraving. So with our CO2 machines, you cannot cut metal, but what you can do is if the metal surface has some sort of coating, for instance, like a Yeti tumbler, you could laser the coating off of the tumbler and then show the metal back. But if it was like a stainless steel tumbler, the only thing that you can really do with it is use metal marking spray, which is a lot like spray paint, but it's like 5 times the price. You spray it over the tumbler, laser over that spray, and it bonds the spray to the outer surface of the metal. And it looks, to me, the way I describe it is it looks a lot like a Sharpie. Now, so if what you really want to do with a machine is engrave metal, I wouldn't make a habit out of that specific job because it can be hit or miss no matter what machine you have, whether it's the most expensive one onto the cheap one. There's variables that happen with that spray. The spray has to be consistent. Your settings have to be on point. So if you're really wanting to engrave metal, I would lean more towards a fiber laser, which we do sell those. But the next model that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Odin. So the Odin is our RF model. What RF means is radio frequency. So this tube is a metal tube that is air cooled as opposed to water cooled like the glass tube. And with an RF tube, you can get finer detail. The beam size is much smaller than a glass tube. And then also with it being air cooled, you don't have to worry as much about the temperature range. But glass tubes can get finer detail and they can fire a lot faster than a glass tube. So you can achieve a faster speed. On the Odin, we have motors that can make the head travel much faster. And also you'll see the head is a different design. It's much lighter than that on the Nova. So you can go up to 2,000 millimeters a second on the Odin, as opposed to on the Nova, you go to 1,000 millimeters a second. And my opinion on this is these machines, the RF machines, specifically the Odin 32, is going to be for somebody who's wanting to do high production, fast engraving. Not as much cutting. It can cut, but it's not going to be able to achieve the same sort of cutting as the Nova series because of the head design. This machine is designed specifically for high production engraving.
And typically this is compared to a Epilog machine, a ProTech machine, and a lot of trophy shops and sign shops that are doing small marking are in need of the fine detail quality and the speed that this can produce. Small placards, you're going to have incredible detail on this machine.
Yep, exactly right. And then the next machine, like I was mentioning earlier, the fiber laser, we've got two models here. So we've got the Aurora 8 and the Aurora 8 Pro. Now the Aurora 8, you can get that in a 20 watt or a 50 watt. And then the Pro, it still shows 50 watt here. I'm waiting for this to update, but now we're only selling it in a 20 watt MOPA. The big difference between Pro and Basic is that the Pro models obviously has the MOPA, which engraves color onto stainless steel, but these can also engrave considerably faster than the Basic models. Also, the Pro models use a 3D board, which means you can only use EasyCAD 3 on that one, as opposed to on the Aurora Basic, it is a 2D board so that you can use Lightburn. Now, 20 watt versus 50 watt, big difference there. Obviously, the price is a little more expensive. So you're going from 6,600 on the 20 watt to 9,000 on the 50 watt. And what you're gaining with increasing your wattage is you can pretty much just engrave deeper faster. So if you're planning on doing deep engraves on like a gun or a coin or what have you, like 3D engraves too, the 50 watt would be able to achieve that much faster than the 20 watt. Anything you want to add on that, Chris?
No, I mean with the wattage, you got to kind of think of it as a different size shovel. The 20 watt is maybe a hand shovel, where you have a full size shovel. With the 50 watt, you're going to be able to remove material faster. They can both achieve the same goal. One is just going to take a little longer.
Yep. To me, it just really depends on what you're looking to do. Like I said, if you're doing a deep coin engrave or guns, then it makes more sense to go to a 50 watt. But if you're just somebody who's going to be engraving photos on metal or engraving business cards or what have you, 20 watt will get it done. No doubt.
Top surface annealing and marking, 20 watt is perfect. You can keep your budget down. But if you need to get deep engravings fast, definitely the 50 watt.
Yep. So yeah, those are the models that we have right now. We're working on a few other things, and I can't get too much into that at the moment. But stay in tune because there's more things coming. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to Chris and I. So the next thing that I want to talk about is our support and our training, which I'll kind of let Chris go more that direction. I have a couple questions on it. What does our support look like? How long does it last? And training, what does that entail?
So I'll take that one on. So for support, we have lifetime support. We have a 2-year warranty with some of our parts being 30 days, with optics and mirrors and lenses, and then some of them being 12 months. But most of the machine is absolutely a 2-year warranty. Lifetime support, how that looks for the end user is you send us an email. All of us get a ticket that we can see and all respond to. And some of us, sometimes there's 3 of us in there looking at the ticket and discussing it at one time. Usually our response time is about 5 to 10 minutes, very quick, where you're getting a response and a way to fix your problem. Most of these problems are solved very quickly, either through use of our knowledge base or just through a couple of questions going back and forth with the email quickly.
Yeah, and on that, so people will ask me while we're on a sales calls, well, what is your support hours like? What times do they work? What days do they work? I guess technically it would be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but all 3 of our technicians work remotely, and their shops like Chris is in right now are their garages, and they will work late at night. They will work on the weekends. We have to tell Brian to get off of his computer at like 3 a.m. sometimes, just because they love doing it. And so that's a great asset to have on our team.
And not only do we love doing it, but we love the machine. We love the company, and we know this is your business. And having run a laser company, I know what it's like to be down. We want you back up and be able to get the products for your customers as well. Ultimately, that means maybe you get more machines, and we support you well, and you're going to buy a Thunder. Yeah, we take it seriously, and while it's 9 to 5, I know I get up in the morning at 6 and I'm checking my tickets and responding. And before I go to bed, or while I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, I have my computer in front of me, responding to tickets. You can ask my wife. Luckily, she doesn't mind.
Yep. Good deal. Okay, so the next thing would be training. So what does training look like? Is it free? Does it come with it? Is there more training after the initial training?
So the training is you get an hour's worth of training, and what we're asking is that you get the machine, you get used to it, comfortable. Use our knowledge base. Our knowledge base is vast, over 400 articles and growing. We're constantly adding to them as topics come up. So that is a living, breathing knowledge base. With that said, you get your machine, you set it up, and you start practicing a little bit. Learn the basics. This way, when you come over to us for training, not only are we not having to waste an hour setting it up with you, but we're able to dive deep into the Lightburn program and your questions about the machine. From going from files that you may run to make your business run, how to make it run efficiently. How do I get the quickest time? How do I set up multiple? We can run through all of that stuff with you and really get you going, hit the ground running if you already have the machine set up and have some basic knowledge about how the communications work and how the machine interface works.
Yep. And on that too, so we've got pre-recorded 1-hour trainings on our knowledge base. We've got a step-by-step guide on how to get the machine set up. There's tons of YouTube videos. So to echo what Chris was saying, I would go through as much of that as you possibly can before you schedule your training. That way you're further along in those easy questions that are going to take up a lot of your time in your training. You get that out of the way, and then you can focus more on the difficult things or the things that you couldn't find answers to when you have your training.
Yeah, I mean, typically for me, at least, I'll hop on to somebody's system real quick and I'll find out if they've done all the basic stuff, if they followed our guide. We have a very, very thorough guide. If you follow that, you should be set for your training and ready to go. I'll make sure that they did that, and then I address whatever questions they have, and then I go through some of the really cool and advanced features of Lightburn to make sure you know it's available. You may not use it, but I want you to know that it's there.
Yep. And before we move on to the next thing, I just want to touch a little bit more on this knowledge base. So I don't know of another laser company out there that has something as vast as this here. So anything you can really think of on the machine, like how to fix this, what's going on with this, there's going to be an article and usually a video as well on how to tackle whatever that task is, whether that's training, like I mentioned, or fixing a head crash. So for me, it's actually a good example. A few months ago, I wasn't really paying attention and I crashed my head into the material. It wasn't bad, but I did do it. And I started freaking out, as I'm sure a lot of y'all do. And the first thing I did was I went into the knowledge base and I looked up head crash. And lo and behold, right there, there's an article preventing and recovering from a head crash. So if you crashed your head into your bed, there's videos, there's 2 videos here, and there's also wording in an article form that shows you how to go about fixing that. And so I watched that, fixed it within 2 to 3 minutes, and I was golden. Same runs true with pretty much everything else on the machine. That's what makes it so easy for us to have remote support, that we have such a vast knowledge base that shows you how to do everything.
Yeah, and our response times are that fast because sometimes it is just sharing a quick article like that, and it takes somebody that may have had to wait hours to get a response from tech support to literally minutes. We send them a link, quickly they read through the link, and they're back up and running in no time. And you know, like Grant said, these are kind of live. I had a question the other day about how to do a ramp test, and we didn't have an article on it. So quickly, I put one together where you can go and see images and video on how this is done. And we'll grab information or make videos ourselves to make that happen. So you have more knowledge, and it's easily attainable for yourself.
Yep, exactly right. Well, the next step here before we get to the Q&A section is I want Chris to give us a little background about himself, give you an idea of what it looks like to be a customer of Thunder Laser. And obviously he works for us now, and he'll get into how that happened.
Well, I started out, I own a landscape company, and I had some time to kill when my day was over. I've got crews running, and I would go out and do the majority of the managerial work. And then next thing you know, at 1 o'clock, I'm home. I was bored. So I looked and searched for a laser, and I did not do my due diligence. And I bought a competitor's laser to begin with. I built that business from one small laser to upgrading a laser to a larger one to having 4 different lasers in my shop, doing hundreds and hundreds of tumblers and other things during the week. And eventually I needed more. I needed something better, less frustrating, more durable, better support, and a better community, really. And I found Thunder. And over the years, getting 1 Thunder and 2 Thunder, 3 Thunder, 4, it just became the place that I wanted to be. And meeting these guys, meeting the whole team, really opened my eyes to what a family they are. And not only is the product amazing and well built and wires organized, but this team is truly a team that cares about their end users and their product.
Yep, and just to update people, I see somebody in the chat named Thunder L kind of stirring up some stuff here. That's not an employee of ours. I don't know who that is, so don't listen to that. So the next thing to jump into before the live chat is Chris is actually going to be engraving something on the Odin. He's going to engrave a photo, and we're not going to watch him engrave it. He's just going to start it, and then at the end of it, he'll show us exactly what it looks like when it's completed. Are you already working on that, Chris, or do you need to get it started?
It's moving along. Yeah, I might run a new one just to show.
Okay. Well, good. Well, let's start going into these Q&As. So I see a bunch of different ones in here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and then work my way up. Okay. Jennifer asks, can these machines be taken apart and then reassembled in order to get them into a space? So yes, actually earlier on the article I had pulled up, let me go back over to the knowledge base. All you have to do is type in doorway, getting Nova Series machines to a standard doorway. So there's a video here and a video here and a little guide on how to disassemble it. So all of the Nova Series machines, even the biggest one, the Nova 63, can be disassembled from the base and then fit through a standard 30-inch doorway. It's a great question. I've actually had to do that. I've got a demo room upstairs, and it's got an Odin in it, and it has a Nova 35. So I had to disassemble it, get it on an elevator, and then fit it through a 30-inch doorway. It can definitely be done, but you'll need some help. Next question.
Yeah, that's the one thing is they are industrial machines. They are built to last. They are built to run every day, all day long. They are heavy.
Very heavy. Okay, Denise White asks, how do you clean the honeycomb beds, and is it even necessary? I guess it just depends on what you're doing. For me, I've never once cleaned a honeycomb bed just because I'm doing a lot of wood and acrylic where how dirty the honeycomb is doesn't impact my my materials and my work. But I do know that some people are cutting fabric and specifically white fabric, and some of the char on the honeycomb can get on it just from it being pressed down on it. So yeah, in those cases you can clean it, but you absolutely don't have to. But the way that I've seen people clean it in the past is they've just gotten a pressure washer and sprayed it down. Maybe they let it soak in LA Awesome before they spray it down. You can take it to a car wash and use the pressure washer there. Have you done that before, Chris?
Yeah, I use some type of a degreaser. I use my pressure washer, and even oven cleaner at times. Depending on how bad the that glue and soot is.
Right.
Let it soak for a little bit and then spray it on down.
Right on. Okay, so with potential trade agreements and shipping being affected with China because of current events in the United States, are there any concerns about importing parts for the machines over the next couple of years? I ask because buying a machine is a long-term investment for us as a company. We want to make sure we can get parts or supplies. It's a great question. I'll tell you, so I've been here since COVID, and through COVID, we never had an issue getting machines, getting parts, or anything like that. I mean, it did take a little bit longer to get it, but we still got them. So to me, that was like the biggest test of the whole production cycle, and we passed. So
and not only that, Grant, there's a lot of companies out there with lead times that are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road. We're maintaining a supply stateside. We maintain parts stateside. I think Brian Sir Bell was answering some of that. Yeah, parts are stateside. Machines are stateside. It would take us quite a long time to have that impacted.
Yep. And so all of our lead times, like Chris was saying, we've got most of the machines in stock here in the US, and we quote 2 to 4 weeks as a lead time. And you'll see if you're in our Facebook groups that most people are getting it before that. Some people are getting it in a week. We just like to put a little cushion on there. Under promise, over deliver. That's kind of how we do it. Okay, the next thing, Brian's answering some of these questions. Is there a place where I can download this? I missed the first few minutes. Yes, so we're recording it, and it's going to be emailed out to everybody. Great question. What kind of wait time is there for a machine? Are replacement parts stocked in the US, or do you have to order them from overseas? So we kind of answered the first part of that. We're looking at 2 to 4 weeks for most of the machines as the lead time. And as far as parts, yes, the parts are stocked here in the US. Usually we can get it tipped out either same day or next day, a business day that is. So yeah, that's no issue at all. That's one thing that we've really worked on this year is having everything in stock and having plenty of them. And as we grow and sell more machines, that became more and more necessary. So yeah, absolutely, we have those in stock. If I'm a new user, or if I am new to laser engraving, what machine would you recommend starting with? So this kind of goes, well, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, this is a mistake that I made when I first started, and I was told, and I didn't listen. The largest, I was brand new. I had no idea. I owned a landscape company. That was not my forte. I had no idea about graphic design. I had no idea about how to use a CNC machine. I bought a midline, smaller machine, and 3 months later, I quickly found out that everybody and their mother is asking, how large can you make it? Now, great, we have the pass through, but how nice is it to not have to cut things down, not have to separate your graphics? So my recommendation, as was told to me a long time ago, is the largest you can afford, because they all run the same. So if you can learn, like Grant said in the beginning, if you can learn the 24, the 52 or the 51 and the 63 operate identical. It's just a larger machine.
Yeah.
So whatever you can afford and whatever you can house at your facility, your shop, your home, go that way, because it opens up the door to so many different possibilities.
Totally agree. Can we use water to clean the inside of the exhaust fans? I currently use 2 different size brushes and it still doesn't really come clean. I would say yes, as long as you're not like putting it in a bathtub full of water. I think
Yeah.
that's fine. But
With the exhaust fans, the fans themselves, I would take a wet rag, lightly spray. We had one client that did spray it a little too much, and it got into the digital motor, and did not work afterwards. So, use a wet towel, wipe it down, clean it out.
yep. Okay, Diane, is this a CAD software? Is the CAD software included with the Pro Fiber Laser series? Okay, so the Pro models of the Fiber Laser, those come with EasyCAD 3. And then the basic models come with EasyCAD 2. But as I mentioned earlier, you can purchase Lightburn for the basic models, whereas you can't on the Pros just yet. I know Lightburn is planning on releasing a version that will work with the 3D board for the Pros, but they haven't done that just yet. And Chris, I don't know if you can see it. Daniel here has a question. He's been using a Nova 63-130 to engrave acrylic and is having issues with inconsistent patterns. He searched high and low for more info on settings, but he's not been able to find any consistency. Do you have recommendations on the best settings for this laser to get a nice consistent textured finish when etching on acrylic? Being that you have a 63-130, maybe you can chime in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to spend too much time on that, on this, I would say definitely send in a ticket. I'm more than happy to help. But a lot of times on acrylic, especially when using 130-watt lens, we might need to go a little bit faster and use as little power as possible. We don't want deep, dirty engravings. Turn the air down. One of the great things about our machine is that we have the dual air assist that is live adjustable. If you see that it's blowing too much debris, live adjust it, turn it down a little bit. But yeah, acrylic is one of those beasts that are a little bit difficult to learn. But once you have it down, the results are amazing, and I'm happy to coach you a little bit. Definitely do a pattern on it or a test grid to see what you like, because a lot of this stuff is end user preference as opposed to the right answer. How deep do you want your engraving to be? How dark do you want your engraving to be? Whereas, with acrylic, let me see if I have my little cheat sheet here, which I'm sure I do. Yeah, so with acrylic, you're going to get pretty much the same colors across the board, but the depth is going to change. So you just have to decide and run these types of tests, and I keep them on a keychain in case I do have to reference it. So it's a great idea to have stuff like this for leather, for your birch, and there's no question at this point, you know where you want to be. You just reference your speed and your power, and away you go.
Yep. But like you were saying, this would be a good ticket to submit, and Chris does the specialized trainings as well. So if you've already used your free 1-hour training, you can schedule a specialized training with him. He has a 63-130, so he can kind of go through it with you and test it on his machine while you're going. Great question. Okay. From Bill, I have the 3580 watt. What is the best setting for doing photos on wood? It's going to vary depending on what wattage you have. Another good ticket, but I'll tell you, I have a 100 watt here that I use, and for wood, I go around 300 millimeters a second and 11% power. But like I said, it's going to vary depending on your wattage. So do some tests with that. That's a good starting point, and then you can go from there. Another important thing is DPI. If you're doing something that's very, very small, increasing your DPI to like 500 isn't going to help as much. So I would try to start around 300 DPI, and then you can work from there.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. There's so many variables from lenses. Yeah, lenses. Have you done the ramp test like I had mentioned to make sure that you are at the smallest dot size? Um, yeah, there's lots of stipulations and I guess finite details that need to be gone over to get perfect engravings on photos, and that's kind of what I'm known for. So more than happy to help you fine tune that.
Yep. And the next one from Shannon, similar to the 63-130 question, I would submit a ticket on that since you haven't used your 1 hour training. Sounds like you've kind of already gotten down the process of using the machine. I would schedule that 1 hour training so you can go over those questions.
Yeah,
Suzanne?
and granite is one of those things that very susceptible to high power. So we need to keep our speeds at a moderate speed and light power.
Yep. Suzanne, is there anywhere we can go to see them all in action and compare them? So not all of them, like not all of the Nova series and then all the Odins and all the Auroras, but we have 4 locations where there is a Nova, Aurora, and an Odin. Uh, Potentially there's going to be more down the road. But right now we've got a location where I am, and that's Quitman, Texas. There is Chris's location, which is Land Lakes outside of Tampa, Florida, Knoxville, Tennessee, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So there's 2 Tennessee options, there's a Texas option, and there's a Florida option. Now, if there's only one machine that you're really interested in, you could email our sales at, and maybe we can get you in touch with somebody who owns that specific machine. But as far as seeing all of the different models in one location, those are the 4 options right now.
And besides size and the 24 not having a rolling base, they're going to be identical. If you opened up the side electronics door on a 24, it's going to look very similar to the 63.
Exactly right. Is there a way to have the laser drop down when cornering on the fabric? Okay, so Chris Rose, I have a Nova 63. Is there a way to have the laser drop down power or drop power when cornering on fabric material that is less? Yes, so you can set your max power and your minimum power. I think that's your answer there. So if you're cutting through, I know with fabric here, if I cut it, I'm running it at like 130 millimeters a second and 30% power. And if your corners are having issues, you can just lower the power on the minimum. That should help. Next, Bill, has anyone tried to engrave on a cowboy hat? So I have engraved a cowboy hat before, actually, and it wasn't a normal cowboy hat. It was a suede fleece material, and it turned out great. I will say that I had to use a very low power because that kind of material can burn up and melt really easily. But a legit cowboy hat, I have not tried it. I don't have any doubt that you would be able to engrave it material wise, but where you're wanting to engrave it would be very important because there's a certain focal distance with the head. And if you're trying to engrave into curved parts of it, that would be pretty difficult. So yeah, that's definitely a good one to reach out to our sales department or schedule a sales call so we can kind of go over those intricacies with you. How often do the prices increase on lasers? In the past few years, we've increased them on January 1st. Reason being is the cost of materials go up throughout the year, shipping costs increase, and we don't want to change the price often throughout the year. So as opposed to doing that, we kind of eat the loss throughout the year and then increase it on January 1st. I'm not saying that's how it's going to be going forward, but that's how it's been in the past. Why does the laser's power become weak during a laser project? It's kind of a
in theory it shouldn't.
right.
You know, and this is where it goes back to: are you running an active chiller or a passive chiller? If the chiller is not cooling the tube down, the tube gets hot, and its efficiency to produce power is decreased, diminished. My old machines did not have an active chiller. It had a radiator and a pump. And that's all it had. And a few times I would have to go run to Lowe's or Home Depot, hit pause in the middle of a job, come back, and you can actually see the fade line of it being dark to light where I paused it, and then dark again to light. Well, if you have a active chiller like we offer with all of our Nova series machines, it should not change. It's going to stay consistent across the entire spectrum of your job. It's maintaining the temperature all the time.
Yep, exactly right. Now, some of these questions, I see that we're getting a lot of them now, If it's a support question, I'll just ask that you email support. This webinar is more for sales related stuff. So I don't want to get into answering too many support things here. But yeah, just shoot an email to our support team. It's just support@thunderlaserusa.com, and they'll be able to help you with that.
And we do take a lot of questions, live questions, where you can log in during the webinar, which is tomorrow afternoon. We like to give everybody a chance to speak and ask their questions, so don't overload it. But by all means, if you have a very specific question, support, and even more so than Facebook, is the best place to address those.
Yep. And on that, I showed this earlier, but just in case some of you guys missed it. So on our website, let me go back to the main page. If you click on knowledge base, and then in the search, just type in webinar. And then the first one is bi-weekly tech webinar. This is where the links are to our tech webinar, like Chris was describing. It's 3 p.m. Central Time on every other Thursday. So it is tomorrow. So join in. If you have time, join in. Alrighty. Next question. That looks like a tech issue. So engraving with the HR head. The HR head is closer to the material, so it will build up on the bottom of the lens. So just in the middle of the job, if you're seeing build up, move the head over, clean it off, and continue. That's not a problem. What do people do in colder climates with their machines? Does the garage need to be heated to prevent damage? Chris?
Let's pull that knowledge base back up and show how quickly and easily something like that is answered. But to answer the question, we're recommending 100% RV antifreeze. If you have the ability to keep some type of heat source, or even keep on really, really cold nights, the RV antifreeze plus running the chiller and keeping it flowing will help. But we do have entire documents written on how to address most of these questions like you're asking come up. What is my choice when my garage isn't climate controlled and I might see a freezing night? So we have options and mitigation methods for that. Not everything's 100%, but we try our best to mitigate.
Yep. And then there's the approved antifreeze. Again,
Correct.
Like we said earlier, almost everything will be answered in that knowledge base. And if it's not, ask us so we can make an article. All right. That was actually a really good question. When machines arrive from overseas. Okay, so when your machines arrive from overseas, do you quality control the machines before shipping it out to the customer? So I was answering this more earlier when we started. We don't have to. A lot of our competitors have to because they're changing the machines. They're getting a machine that maybe doesn't have the wiring that it should for the US, or some of the components just aren't good quality. So for us, we have really good quality components. The machine is built at our factory in China. It is QC'd in China, must go through all these checkpoints. And after all that's done, the beam alignment is on point, which I guess on the beam alignment, your machine will come with a little acrylic cube that shows you that the beam is vertical, the verticality of the beam, and it's on point. And so all of that is done in China. It's shipped to our warehouses either in LA or New Jersey, and then shipped directly to the customer. We have no need to open the crates up and recheck them. They're spot on every time.
Yeah, and you're not loading a tube. We're not shipping the tube separate. It is ready to go, minus the fact that you have to put 2 gallons of distilled water in. You start plugging in the peripherals in the back of the machine. You may want to do an alignment test just to verify. But otherwise, I have not seen, let's say it's the 0.1% that through the 4,000-mile journey and then in the back of a LTL truck that something has vibrated loose. That rarely happens. And that is unheard of with a machine like this. And it's just testament to the quality. And I'm speaking from owning different machines and several Thunder Lasers. I have yet to align one that has come out of the box.
Yeah, and you and I are good testaments of that, because you have like 3 or 4 of our machines there, plus you have ones that you had before that you've sold to get bigger ones. And I've had, I think, about 5 machines delivered at my location since I've been here. I've never had to realign a machine. Not even the oldest one over time, never had to. Okay. the hour-long training, how long after your purchase of the machine can you take your training? So we kind of answered that earlier too. So you want to get the machine, go through our getting started guide, watch the pre-recorded 1 hour trainings, go through the knowledge base as much as you can before you schedule your training so you can get the easy stuff out of the way. So you can do it as soon as you've done all those things.
Yeah, and it's completely up to you. If you're having a hard time, we don't want it. We prefer that you learn a little bit about and start using it. But we get it. There are times where you just don't understand some things, and you need your handheld a little bit to get everything set up correctly, and that's fine. What we would prefer is move you along even further during that training. Know the absolute basics. So when you reach us, we are really showing you what the machine can do and how it can benefit your business and make you money. Because ultimately that's what most people are buying it for.
Right. And take advantage of the
beep?
technicians. The Odin's ready. Take advantage of the technicians. You don't have to wait for your training to talk to support. If there's something that's keeping you from being able to get through it, then just email support. And then once you've emailed support, gone through whatever's the hiccup, you can schedule that training. The support is lifetime.
So real quick before we go on any further, for 2 minutes, Grant, congratulations. Grant just had a baby, and I just did a nice little image of him, his baby, and his beautiful wife.
Dang, that's good.
And this only took a couple minutes. What was it, about 10 minutes maybe? That is a 1200 DPI off of our Odin. I wasn't running high speed because I like my detail and I like the dark. But yeah, I mean, that's...
Wow. Good job, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Knows how to do it. All right. Next question is from Marcos. Where do you sell the wireless remote for the 63? I think I know what you're talking about. It's that little orange thing. We don't sell those. They work for Ruida controllers, don't they?
They do.
So you can purchase those, but it's not going to be through us. I don't even think we're necessarily recommending to do that, but it's up to you if you want
to. No,
to.
And there are some good reasons to have that, to move the machine while you're trying to adjust stuff so you don't have to reach over. If you have a 63 like me and you're not the largest person in the world, sometimes it's better to have some type of remote assistance to help you. But
you can control the machine on the computer though.
Yeah, and more often than not, people get lazy or complacent, and they just assume that I can start my machine from my kitchen while I'm making my lunch. And next thing you know, that's when problems arise. So we kind of steer away from any type of remote or wireless stuff. But it can be done, and we even have some articles that steer you in the right direction if you choose to do it.
All right, I'm trying to go through these. A lot of these, like I mentioned earlier, are tech questions. I just want to make sure we get through the sales-related questions before we start answering some of those. And Brian is in here answering. So after you've asked a question that's more tech-related, you see Brian Bell in here answering it. So scroll through there, make sure you're updating. Where can I get the small test thing? Where can I get the small test thing that Chris had? I did one, and it was huge and a big waste of money. So is that in the knowledge base as well?
How to create, it's actually built into Lightburn now. These are old ones that I had to create manually, but now they are built into Lightburn. And then also we have them on our knowledge base. It's a material test, and you can download it. And as long as you don't change any of the settings, it should run like this. It'll print out your settings. It'll print out your speed, power, and all that stuff. And then you can also edit the material. So you can say birch plywood or acrylic. Very useful.
Yep. Suzanne has a question. What do the different lenses do? This is a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So the 2-inch head or lens comes with the machine. It's the standard one. And so I always tell people that it's the most versatile head. You can use that head to do pretty much every avenue. So if you're cutting thinner materials on up to like 3/8 or a 1/2 inch, maybe, depending on what material and the quality. And you can also engrave up to 500 DPI with the 2-inch head. Now, the other two options that we have, the HR head and the 4-inch, those are more specialized to specific areas. So the HR head is going to be pretty much exclusively for fine detailed engraving. Could be photos, could be small lettering, but you can get up to actually 1,000 DPI with the HR head. I think we quote 800 on the website, but you can get up to 1,000 with that head. And then on the 4-inch, that is mainly used for cutting thicker materials. So if you're wanting to cut a material that is 3/8, half inch, or even thicker than that, the 4-inch is best for that sort of job. Chris might explain this better than me, but it elongates the beam and it makes it easier for you to cut the thicker materials.
Yeah, just think of the beam of having a power band of a certain distance where it's usable, and let's just for giggles say that the 2-inch head has about a half-inch power band where it's still going to work and still have decent detail, and then after that it just fades away into nothing. Where the 4-inch head is actually usable over a greater distance. So let's say you had a whiskey flask that had a bend to it. You can actually get around that bend a little bit because it does have the ability to carry the power further over a greater distance.
That's a great point. I see a lot of people using the 4-inch head for engraving Stanleys, those new tumblers that are really popular because of the variance in height of the cup. Also, a good example to describe some of this, or at least I think it's a good example. Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I always talk about a flashlight. So if you're in a dark room and you have a flashlight and you're very far away from the wall, it's going to be dim and not as powerful. And the closer you get, the more powerful it is. So like a 2-inch, you have to be really close to get all of the power that's necessary. And then with the 4-inch, you could be further and still get a similar or almost the same result. So like Chris mentioned, it elongates, gives you more distance where you can actually cut through something or engrave.
Right.
Coming from using a Glowforge Pro to a Nova 35, any general advice in that regard? Yes. Go ahead, Chris.
Go for it. I was just going to say, I do a lot of trainings and I talk to a lot of people on sales calls for the Glowforge. And minus the fact that you don't have an easy button for material, that is the only hurdle. Your capabilities, your speeds, your productivity just soars through the roof. You go from something that would take 45 minutes down to 15. That said, we have to learn the speeds and powers for different materials, and that's where your test patterns come in. The more of these things that you do with test patterns and understanding what the machine is going to do when you adjust a power or a speed, the better off you're going to be on different materials. But that's the biggest learning curve, is learning that part of it. Downloading our material library, where it gives you a baseline for some of these things, is also very helpful. So at least you have a starting point, and then you can dial in from where we're telling you to start.
Yep. Yeah, and on that,
what do you see?
Like you said, a lot of our customers are coming from Glowforge. I would say, if not half of them are coming from Glowforge, close to it, maybe 40%. So you're not alone in that regard. In our Facebook group, we've got about 11,000 people in there. I guarantee you a lot of them had a similar path that you have had, and they don't have very many issues at all. I mean, the concern is always, is it hard to make the switch? Is it hard to use a Thunder Laser? And it's not, especially now. I know when I first started working here about 3 years ago, we didn't really have a knowledge base. There wasn't really YouTube videos or anything like that. Well, now there's tons of YouTube videos. We got a knowledge base full of stuff that's helpful for you. The Facebook group has grown. We've got more technicians. So you've got plenty of help to be able to get that thing up and running. You shouldn't have any issue at all. It's not harder to use, but you do have more control over the machine, which is more things to learn.
And a huge point, because one of my sales calls was adamant about this. He's coming from a Glowforge. He's like, it's always overheating, so I can't run it all day, and I have to be connected to the internet, and my shop has horrible Wi-Fi. And those are not concerns on this side. You're not uploading the artwork that you built to a server somewhere where it could possibly be stolen or what have you. But he had some major concerns about these Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, but end company controlled websites where you're having to send your data to, and then it comes back down to the machine.
The three main reasons that people are making that switch is speed, support, and build quality. Also, like Chris mentioned, there's another reason, the the software being cloud-based. But on that, I think that's a great conversation to have with our sales team. So you can actually schedule a sales call online on our website, or if you look at the top of this chat, I think you guys can see this. There's a little link there for you to schedule a sales call. So we'd love to talk to you about what those differences are. Liz asked, what is the difference between a fiber and a CO2 laser? So a fiber laser is pretty much exclusively for engraving metal, some plastics, and leatherette. There might be some outliers here or there that you can engrave, but those are the three main things that I see out of people who are looking for a fiber laser. Now with the CO2, you're going to engrave and cut more organic materials, wood, leather, fabric, acrylic, those sort of things. So the difference is what you can work on. Also, at least in our machines, the fiber is much smaller, whereas our CO2s are much bigger. So another great thing to get on a sales call with one of our sales reps and go over that. Good question. Can you do a 1 hour training if you bought your machine secondhand? Yes.
Yes.
We want you to.
Yes, and it's beneficial for you, and it's beneficial for us. We are teaching you about the machine and making sure you have the same knowledge that the first owner did, and you will be much happier with our machine afterwards.
And then Craig said, where can we find the site locations to see in person? Just email our sales email address, sales@thunderlaserusa.com, and we'll get you in the right area there. All right. Josh, what is a safe temperature? It usually hangs out around 20. Okay, so that's more of a support question. Do we need an extractor for fumes? No, you don't need one. So it comes with an exhaust fan. All of our machines will come with an exhaust fan, and what that exhaust fan does is it pulls the smoke and the fumes per se out of your machine and then outside. So you'll have to cut a hole through a wall, window, or through the ceiling, and it'll exhaust all that smoke outside. So there are cases where people do need a fume extractor. Reason being, some of the cases that I've had are people being in like a mall or a shop area where they cannot cut a hole outside, or having a business right next to them and they didn't want to be pushing the smoke into their neighbor business. So in those instances, yes, people do get a fume extractor, but I generally advise against it, not because they're not great, but because they're very expensive. They can be anywhere between $3,000 to like $10,000 depending on which one you get, and then you have to change the filters out pretty regularly. Again, if that's a route that you have to go, do it, but if you can avoid it, I would avoid it.
Yeah, there's a large consumable cost that goes with those.
Mm-hmm. Second question regarding the camera. Okay, it's a support. If you only want to do tumblers, what machine do you recommend? Is it possible to run more than one at a time? Great question. So for doing tumblers, I guess it depends on how many you're doing, because there's a few different things that come to mind for me. I would say the most common one would be the Nova 24, just because it's not a big footprint. So you could have several of them if you wanted to. And the working area on that one is 24 by 16. The overall cost of the machine is relatively low compared to the other one, 7,400. So with that one, you can engrave just about every cup or bottle you'd want to with the rotary. But I tend to at least try to give people the idea to go to the 35, the Nova 35. And the reason being is just in case you want to start doing Yeti dog bowls or branch off into other things. I at least want you to think about that being a possibility, because I have people all the time who buy a machine for one specific thing. They go with a smaller one like the Nova 24. And then a year later, they're like, dang it, I wish I would have got the bigger one because now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And it'd be really nice to have a bigger one. It's never the other way around. They never get a bigger one and like, dang it, I wish I would have had a smaller one.
And as far as doing multiple, our rotary system only holds one. I have seen people get very creative. And being in the business, and that was the bread and butter of my business was tumblers. I was 3 to 5 minutes, and you're making $10 to $20 per unit. It was literally in and out, in and out. And while one is running, you're cleaning or unpacking. So if you get into a workflow, it's very efficient to run one.
And I've seen some rotaries out there that will allow for you to do multiple at one time. there are some things with that I think could go wrong. Like imagine if one little tweak happens on while you're engraving the first cup, and then from every cup after that, it's going to replicate that issue or make it even worse. I'm not saying that does happen, but that's a concern of mine. To me, it's not going to speed the process up that much to do more than one at a time. So you're better off just doing the one at a time. And while one's engraving, like Chris said, you can just clean the other. If you really need to engrave more than one at one time, you could just like lay them in the bed with a jig, as long as you're only engraving on part of it. So say you're engraving vertically up and down, like where it says body armor here. If you're just doing that, then you could lay them all across the bed and do several of them at one time. But otherwise, if you're engraving more around the cup or all the way around it, you would need the rotary and do one at a time. Let's see what else we got here. Why do I want a 100 watt over an 80 watt or a 60 watt? Is it all about speed? Partially. It's partially about speed. The other half of that is going to also be how thick you want to cut. If people are on the phone with me and they're telling me, hey, I want to cut 1/2 inch, I'm trying to get them to go with a 100 watt, not to say that you can't cut 1/2 inch with a 60 watt or an 80 watt. You could cut 1/2 inch with a 10 watt if you wanted to, but you're going to have to do several passes. And the more passes you do, it's going to char the edges really bad. And then your final product may not look very good. So 100 watt is going to be able to do 1/2 inch the most consistently with less power than the other machines or the other wattages that you mentioned. So that also helps with running it at a lower power. Your tube life should last a little bit longer. So yeah, to better answer that, it's how thick you want to cut, also how fast you want to cut. If you're only cutting 1/4 inch all the time, a 60 watt will do that. But imagine you're wanting to do 10,000 ornaments in November. It would behoove you to want to go with a higher wattage so you can get them done faster, which a larger bed size is also important for that too. If you're looking at the 35-100 and you're trying to, I mean, I don't know how many you could fit on there depending on the size. So you can fit 20 ornaments on a sheet of wood for the Nova 35, but on the 51, you may be able to fit 40 of them. That would help increase your production. So it just depends on your use. Would you point me to an article or video about how to price my work? I usually point our customers to the Facebook group. I think that's a great place for that kind of question. Like I said earlier, we've got 11,000 people in there, and everybody's going to have a different pricing structure, I'm sure, but you can get a general idea.
And it's demographic driven. So depending on the part of the country you're in, you can assume that your laser time is going to be anywhere from $100 an hour all the way up to $200, even more if you are in a niche. And then your product you're buying, like if you're buying JDS tumblers for let's say $7, you're definitely, you're charging the end client $14 plus your time on the machine. So it is all across the board for something like that.
Yep. All right, let me see. So I own a Nova 51-100, very happy. That's great, I love to hear that. I'm considering buying an Aurora 820 watt. Could I update it later to a 50 watt? I'm sure you could. Now, we haven't been selling the Aurora for more than just a couple of years now, so I haven't had anybody ask about that or do that. So I won't say no, you can't, but I would just say spend the extra money up front and get the one that you're really wanting.
In theory, yes. I mean, it's just the source. Everything else remains the same, from the scan head and mirror assemblies to the controller board. So it would just be a change in settings. Might be more expensive doing it that way though.
Yeah.
On the second run, buying it piecemeal. Which
is a great point. So talking about the Nova series and doing an upgrade like that, so you can go from a Nova 51-100 to a 130. But what you need to keep in mind with that is not only do you need a 130 watt tube, but you'll also need to upgrade your power supply and your chiller. So if that's something you really think you're going to do in the next year or two, I would spend the extra, $1,200 and go ahead and do that now as opposed to doing it later. That's just my 2 cents. Trying to go through a few more here. I see that we reached an hour. See if we can answer a few more questions. Will you offer a built-in fume extractor? So I assume you're probably talking about an exhaust fan. So on the Odin, it is actually kind of like, I wish I had a picture of it. Maybe we do. You want to talk about it, Chris, while I look and see if I have a picture?
Built-in fume extractor, no. There's a lot of maintenance involved in that and a lot of changing of the filters. Built-in exhaust fan, no. You want to be able to maintenance all of these things easily, and plus the I think eventually maybe on a smaller unit would make more sense, but on these larger units, it's better to have some of these things where heat isn't an issue, where it's easy to get to and maintain and clean. It's really not too big of a deal. There's even a little recessed panel in the back of our machines where that's where mine sits. Mine sits there. I can still push it up against the wall almost. So they really don't get in the way.
Yeah, and to echo what Chris was saying, I mean, there's two ways you can do it. You can either put all that stuff like the chiller, exhaust fan, air compressor inside the machine, or you can put it outside. I think the reason why we put it on the outside is exactly what Chris was saying. It's easier to clean those things and maintenance them if need be, but also the other components that are inside the machine. So the more things that you jam pack inside of a laser, the harder it is to get in there and clean it, because you only have so much space inside those cabinets. If I put a chiller in there, which is pretty dang big, it's going to take up a huge majority of that machine.
And let's just assume that we have a chiller here and we have an air pump next to it. The air pump is generating a ton of heat. You're talking probably 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And you have a chiller trying to keep things cool. That's not the most efficient way about it. So having things separate, easy to maintain. Something goes wrong and you need to change out a part. It's very easy to change peripherals that are outside of the unit.
Yep. Also, Maria said, I have an old Rotoboss rotary with all the plastic parts. Austin, that means you've been around here for a minute. To get the updated metal parts, who do we need to contact? You can email our sales team. We don't sell the upgraded kit, but we'll get you in the right direction. So just sales@thunderlaserusa.com. And then Shannon asked, can you do dog bowls with the 63 in Rotoboss? Is there a trick for that, for the big stuff? Yes, you can engrave stuff like that. And really what I had to do was I removed the bed, the honeycomb bed, and the knife blade. I sat the rotary in the bottom of the machine. Actually, I think I had to set something under the rotary to bring it up a little bit to make sure the focal distance was correct. But yes, absolutely, you can do dog bowls, and really the Nova 35 on up to the 63. It doesn't have to be the 63. Chris, can you show us the machine you have? Okay. Do you want to see if you can pick up your laptop, or do you have too much plugged into it?
I can unplug. What do we want to see?
They want to see your shop and the machines that are in it.
Sure.
All right, so on the left, that's the Odin. On the right, you've got the Nova 63. And then, if you turn it the other way, the Aurora is right there.
And there just might be a room for one more Aurora there. Maybe we'll be posting something about that soon.
Yep, it's a secret right now, but we will tell you soon. Do you offer a trade-in program for upgrades or sell refurbished used machines? So we don't have a trade-in program. You'll see that people will sell used machines in the Facebook group, so you can definitely do that and then purchase a bigger one. As far as selling refurbished or used machines, we don't sell used ones, but refurbs, if a machine gets damaged during transit, then we will refurb them and then we sell them at a discount. So yeah, it varies on what we have in stock. Those tend to sell very quick because they're a really good deal. But those are pickup only. We don't ship the refurbs out of Knoxville, Tennessee. All right, we got about 5 more minutes here. When getting a larger machine, is it better to get a lower wattage tube for more detailed engraves, or is higher wattage still okay without losing detail? I always reference Chris with this. This is a
yeah,
asked quite frequently.
I'm of the belief that optics are a huge role in all of this, and if you know how to manipulate your optics, and fine tune your, here we go back to that ramp test. You should be able to get very similar, and you're your own critic, right? Your worst critic. Yeah, I find that, can I get a little bit more detail out of a lower wattage? Absolutely. Will my customer notice? maybe not. I mean, this is a 12 inch tile
And that's
on
130
the,
watt.
this is 130 watt. So
This
is it possible? Absolutely.
what I tell people is I use a 100 watt machine at my location for the Nova series, and I'd say I'm pretty good at photos. I'm better than the average bear, but Chris can get way better photos than me with the 130. So it has nothing to do with the wattage. It's more of the user and how you know to use the machine and tweak your photos and that sort of thing. Like, that's awesome.
I
And
mean,
again, a little shameless plug. If you want to learn how to do that with a 130 watt or whatever wattage, you can schedule your specialized training with Chris, and he'll help teach you.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's doable, but I teach you all of the things to consider, even from down to the material. You have to consider the evaporation rate, I would say, or the rate of removal of material, and your dot size. So there's a lot of things to consider, and a lot of things people don't think about when they're doing photos that I teach you.
Okay, 3 more questions. The first one, what are some examples of hardwoods that can be cleanly cut with half-inch hardwoods that can be cut with a 100 watt laser? Let me say that again. What are some examples of hardwoods that can be cleanly cut, half-inch thick, on a Nova 100 watt laser? So like I mentioned earlier, I have a 100 watt. As far as the hardwoods, I've cut plywoods that have a lot of glue in it. I wouldn't recommend it, but I've done it in demos. I've cut 3/4 inch pine with the 130. I know that's a very soft wood, but I've cut oak.
Cedar's also soft, but it goes through like butter.
There's a bunch of different woods that I've cut. I couldn't give you a list of them, but I'm doing demos, like 5 of them a month, and people will bring in all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's been very rare for me to not be able to get through half-inch, whatever it is. The only times that I can remember not being able to do it with one pass was when it was several layers for plywood,
Yeah,
and it had a lot of glue.
if you're buying newer cabinet grade plywood that has dark glue on it, it is almost impenetrable. I don't care what wattage you have.
Yeah.
So it will depend on the material, for sure.
Okay, 2 more questions. How do you know what materials you can and cannot laser safely in relation to fumes? This is a fantastic question. I'll tell you, for me, what I do is I Google, is X material laserable? And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be an article or something out there, a video showing you that machine or that material being lasered, and talk about if it's safe or not. And on that point, this is something that we're working on right now. We've had discussions about building out this sort of information for you guys in the knowledge base. So there's tons of materials that you can physically cut and engrave that you shouldn't for the fumes, like PVC. I know you can cut it, you can engrave it, but that can kill you, so you don't want to do it. But yeah, like I said, you just Google is X material laserable, whatever that material is, Google that, and I guarantee you'll find something. And if you don't, you can email our support team and find the MSDS sheets. I think they changed the name of that to MDS or something. You find the sheets about the material that gives you more information about them. Email that to our tech team, and they can help you figure out if it's safe or not. All right, last one. I have a Nova 2460 watt. For the pass-through, does it open in the back? Yes. So in the back of the machine, let me see if I can share my screen over here. Let me go to Laser Machines, Nova 24. Okay, on the back here, this little plate comes off. So it's got 6 Allen screws. You take all those off and you can pass all the way through front to back. And I'm glad you asked this question. This part comes off too. All of our Nova series machines will have a front to back pass through, all of them. So you're limited by the width of the bed. On the 24, it would be 24 inches is as wide as you can actually engrave. You can actually fit something a little bit wider through the pass through, but 24 by infinity is how big you can cut and engrave with the pass through.
What is the thickness limitations on that, Grant?
It's 0.8 of an inch, so just over 3/4. Yep. All great questions today. I would say this was pretty successful. Thank all of you for joining. I would ask that if you have more questions that didn't get answered, or if you would just like to talk to one of us about the machines, just go on our website. You see where I'm at on this page here. get a free quote today. It takes you to our call scheduling page where you can just pick a day and time that works best for you and talk one-on-one with myself, Chris, or one of our other sales reps over here. We'd love to be able to do that with you, figure out what machine works best for you, what accessories you would need, or see if Thunder Laser is even right for you. If it's not, then we'll tell you. But I'd love to get that opportunity. So,
and a lot of people do question, why do I need a sales call? Well, like Grant just said, maybe it's not the right fit. Maybe you are thinking that you need other accessories where if you were able to click a couple buttons online, you would have a basket full of all of these things that you may never use. We qualify. We make sure that you are buying the things and only the things that you need to be successful in what your plans are. Now, are the accessories available in the future? Yes, but we want you to hit the ground, again, running with these machines to be successful.
And that's a great point too. You don't have to schedule a sales call to order a machine or a accessory. This is just a really good opportunity for you to get some expert advice. If you know what you want and you already have a machine or you've been around machines forever, you can just call us or email us and we can send you a quote. That's no issue. But we'd love to be able to talk to you. But yeah, again, thank you everybody for joining in. I'd say this was pretty successful today. If your question didn't get answered, like I said, schedule a call, email sales, or if it's a tech question, a support question where you need help, email support. But thanks again. We'll plan on doing this again next month, and y'all have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.